In the history of warfare, only one man never lost a battle. Not once, not ever. He fought for 13 years across 3 continents against the greatest empires on Earth. His name was Alexander, and by the age of 32, he had conquered the known world. But here is the question nobody asks. Was Alexander great because he was lucky, or was there something in his mind that made him unstoppable? Today, we find out. Alexander was born in 356 BC in the Kingdom of Macedon. His father was King Philip II, a brilliant warrior king. But his mother, Olympias, told Alexander something different. She told him he was not just the son of a king. She told him he was the son of a god. Specifically, Zeus, the king of all gods. Alexander believed her, and that belief changed everything. At age 13, his father hired the greatest mind in the world to teach him. That teacher was Aristotle. Aristotle taught Alexander philosophy, science, medicine, and strategy. While other princes learned to fight, Alexander learned to think. And thinking would become his greatest weapon. At just 16 years old, Alexander fought his first battle. His father had gone to war, leaving young Alexander in charge of Macedon. A tribe called the Mighty saw their chance and attacked. They expected an easy victory against a teenage boy. They were wrong. Alexander crushed them completely. He was 16 years old. 2 years later, at the Battle of Chaeronea, Alexander commanded the elite Macedonian cavalry. He broke through the famous sacred band of Thebes, the most feared soldiers in Greece. His father Philip watched from the other side of the battlefield. After the victory, Philip looked at his son and said, "My son, Macedonia is too small for you. Find yourself a larger kingdom." He was right. 336 BC, King Philip was assassinated. Alexander was 20 years old, and now he was king. His enemies celebrated. They thought he was too young, too inexperienced. They were about to learn the most painful lesson of their lives. Within 2 years, Alexander had secured Greece, crushed every rebellion, and turned his eyes east to Persia, the greatest empire the world had ever seen. The Persian Empire stretched from Egypt to India. Its king Darius III commanded an army of hundreds of thousands. Alexander had 40,000 men. In 334 BC, Alexander crossed into Persian territory. At the Battle of Granicus River, his generals warned him to wait. Alexander ignored them. He charged across the river himself, leading from the front, and broke the Persian line before they could form a defense. First battle against Persia, Alexander wins. So what made Alexander truly unbeatable? 3 things. First, speed. Alexander moved his army faster than anyone thought possible. By the time his enemies prepared their defense, Alexander was already there. Speed was his first weapon. Second, fearlessness. Alexander always led from the front. He was wounded multiple times in battle. His soldiers saw their king bleeding and fighting through pain. That created a loyalty that no amount of money could buy. When your king fights beside you, you fight harder. Third, and most importantly, psychology. Alexander understood his enemies better than they understood themselves. At every battle, he found the one weak point and hit it with everything he had. At Gaugamela, his greatest battle, Darius had over 200,000 soldiers against Alexander's 47,000. The odds were impossible. But Alexander saw a gap in the Persian line, a small gap. He drove his cavalry like an arrow straight through that gap, directly at Darius. Once again, Darius fled. The greatest army in the world, defeated by psychology.
After Persia, Alexander kept going. Egypt, Central Asia, Afghanistan, and finally, India. At every step, people said it was impossible. At every step, Alexander proved them wrong. But in India, something finally stopped him. Not an enemy army, his own men. They had been marching and fighting for 10 years. They were thousands of miles from home. They refused to go further. For the first time in his life, Alexander faced a battle he could not win. He wept. Not from sadness, but because, in his own words, there are no more worlds to conquer. He turned back west, and in 323 BC, in the city of Babylon, Alexander the Great died. He was just 32 years old. In 13 years, he fought over 20 major battles. He never lost a single one. He created an empire stretching 3,000 miles and changed the course of human history forever. Was he lucky? No. He was prepared. He was fearless. And he was always one step ahead. That is why, 2,300 years later, we still call him Alexander the Great. If you want to know more stories like this, subscribe to History of Shadows. Every empire has a story. Every war has a secret. And we are just getting started.